Hello, it's Walter, and first off, I have to apologize. I did not get my article and video out last week. Um, it's kind of really crazy week, and I just basically had a brain fart. Um, anyway, I was down at the scrap yard. I got a bunch of metal because I'm going to be making a second awning in the other part of my little bitty yard. My little dogs are getting cooked by the sun, and it's pretty brutal to be out in the direct sun. Like around 9 o'clock, a lot of times the UV index is like a 6, and some days it's even an 8 or 9 by 9 or 10 o'clock. So it just cooks the skin, and that's something I'm trying to avoid is skin cancer. It doesn't run in my family, but I'd rather play it smart and play it safe. So if I get sun exposure, I try to do it earlier in the morning, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock, and then the same thing in the evening when the UV index is way lower, so you're still going to get the vitamin D from the sun, but you're not going to get that brutal intensity. So as you can see over here in this back corner, I've got a bunch of metal that I'm going to be working with, and I've already pre-cut most of it, and I'll show you the other little section over here. So you can see all this metal here. I cut this up on my bandsaw, pre-cut it to certain lengths. Those longer pieces actually will insert into these, and I'm going to be making brackets. And then I got to drill all of these little pieces too. And I'll probably possibly I might put little cross braces in them, and that way my awning that I'm going to be putting up using used billboard vinyl will be strong, and it'll hold up well, and I can be able to take it apart. I don't want to just weld it up in place, because then if I ever do get out of this place and move somewhere, then I'm going to have to basically saw it, take it apart, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'll probably use like cotter pins or something where I can quickly take it all apart. I can use bolts and nuts on it, but that's going to be a bigger expense, and it isn't going to be any quicker actually in taking it apart or putting it together. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a heads up on why some of the issues why I didn't get my video out and article out last week. So let's jump into that. So now that you know some of the things I'm working on around here, and that's why I have all this metal, then I'm going to be, once I get my awning set up, I've got other projects I want to do, such as building something else for my power rack. A couple things that I'll be showing people down the road here as I get them done. But again, my apologies for not getting that video out last Wednesday, in the article. And what I wanted to talk about in this video really is the differences between kettlebell swings. As we talked about in another video about Gitovic sport, um, a Gitovic is a kettlebell lifter. Of course, there's actually different types of kettlebell lifting, and one of the things is with Gitovic sport, or GS, it is a sport. So you have to look at the goal. What's the goal of training in the GS style? Well, it's a 10-minute competition where a person is doing, perhaps they're competing in a long cycle clean and jerk for 10 minutes, so they do a double kettlebell clean before every jerk, and then they jerk the kettlebells overhead. The other two movements that are contested are the kettlebell snatch, which they do with one hand, and then they do kettlebell jerks. So they do one kettlebell clean, and then they just do a series of jerks, one after the other, so there's only one clean. And the thing with that GS style, or Gitovoy sport style, it's actually they're training to be able to compete in the sport. They're not concerned about the performance that is going to give them in other areas really in their life. They don't compete or train for GS with the thought that it's going to improve sports performance in other areas of their life. Whereas when you look at the hard style, the specific purpose of hard style training isn't just to be able to train with kettlebells, because a lot of the principles that you're using in training with the RKC hard style form of training is those principles that you learn can be applied to other forms of training. So in reality, when you're looking at training a particular way, you have to ask yourself why you're training that way. If you're going to compete in power lifts, well, you train the power lifts. If you're going to compete in Olympic weightlifting, well, you compete in Olympic weightlifting. And if you're going to compete in Gitovoy sport, or GS, with kettlebells, then you're training to compete in a particular sport. It is a sport. So the thinking is those you're going to put your effort into improving your ability to compete in that sport. And the thought process isn't that competing in that is going to improve your performance in other sports, because once you start competing in it, you have to get very specific in your training in order to improve your performance in that particular sport. So when you look at it, a person may use the power lifts, the bench, the squat, the deadlift that's contested in powerlifting. A person may use those to gain basic strength to improve their performance in other sports. And a person may choose to use the Olympic weightlifting exercises, the clean and jerk and the snatch, or the assistant type movements they might do, like power cleans or power cleans from the hang, or muscle snatches and high pulls. They might choose to use those movements to improve performance in other areas of their life because they're not competing in them. And the same thing with kettlebells. Now with kettlebells, if you're looking to improve your performance in other areas, in other sports, most generally you're better off doing the RKC hardstyle, because it's more about force production versus developing efficiency in the exercise. Getaway sport is more about becoming very efficient. Yes, it has to do with conditioning, but they contest with double 32 kilogram kettlebells, and they don't go higher than that in those sports. Whereas in RKC hardstyle, a person might go up to the 48 kilogram kettlebells, depending on what they're doing. But it's all about developing better strength and better conditioning and better force production that can be applied to other sports or outdoor recreational activities that you might be engaged in, or even indoor recreational activities. So, and those techniques that you learn in the RKC hardstyle can also be employed in various occupations, versus the getaway sport. It does have carryover, but I don't think it does as much as the RKC hardstyle, because the RKC hardstyle will actually open you up to a broader window of training exercises and techniques that you can use, versus the GS is more about the kettlebell snatch, long cycle clean and jerks, and jerks. So with that out of the way, one thing I wanted to cover is the difference between the swings, because sometimes people will get confused. An RKC hardstyle swing, as I demonstrated in another video, is you come up to the top and it's all about the hip hinge, and you come up and you plank really hard as the kettlebell floats up. With a GS style, it's more about trying to be efficient. It's almost like a pendulum style, so it looks more like this. And even though you don't rock back on with your toes coming up, you can kind of get that sensation. I'll give you a little side view. And you can probably see my knees kind of shoot forward and scoop forward as I'm doing a GS style swing. I'm not messing around with kettlebells right now because I just want you to focus on what my body's kind of doing. But that is a GS style swing. And basically that's how they do cleans and snatches, is with the same sort of scooping movement with the knees. So that's GS style. But if you're going to train for sports performance in other areas, or for your occupation, or just to get stronger and be able to put out more force production, then I would use the RKC hardstyle and practice that technique and learn it very well. Now the other issue is some people do what's called a squatting swing, which is kind of it's not a swing, it's not a squat. And what they do is when they come down the kettlebell, they just squat and they swing like this. And there's a lot of forward movement. Like with the GS style, your hips do go back, your knees come back, and then the knees come forward with the hips. And then of course RKC is like that. But some people will swing like this. I have to think about it because I don't do it that way. One thing that's going on is they're doing a lot of the work lifting with their arms, so generally you'll see them use real light kettlebells. because they're not getting much hip action and power and force from their hips and their legs driving into the ground. So that style of swing we don't want to do, because it's not good form for a squat, and it's not good form for a swing. You're more apt to get injured with it, and it doesn't allow you to put forth the greatest amount of force production. So how can you correct it? Well, if you're a trainer or a coach, one little technique that works really well is verbal cues are good, but sometimes a physical cue works way quicker. So if someone is scooping like that, here's what you can do. Get yourself a stick of some sort. And what I would do is I would place this, have them, the person that's going to do their kettlebell swings, stand off to their side and hold the stick like right here. So if they're doing an RKC style, your knees may go forward a little bit, but not a whole lot. So as you hinge back, and then push their hips back into their hinge position with no kettlebell, and then see where their knee is. And you want this pretty vertical, this lower leg. And then plant this stick right here at an angle. Of course, you're standing off to the side holding it. And when they swing, their knee shouldn't hit this. They should pull through just like that. And so if they try to do a squatting swing, what's going to happen as soon as they start squatting, their knee's going to hit this. And it's like, oh, I goofed up. So have them do this without any kettlebell until they get the proper motion and they stop trying to until they stop trying to do a squatting swing and their hips actually go back and come forward and pull through. So what do you do if you don't have a coach around or a training partner? Well, you can't very well hold that stick in that position and be able to do the movement. So I would use a chair. Kind of do the same thing, just set the chair at an angle, and you can do swings with the chair right here. And by having it set up, I would go down into my hinge position, and then I'd adjust this chair. So it's almost touching my shin right down here. And then when I do swings, I shouldn't really hit that chair. If I start doing a squatting swing, see, I hit the chair, and it cues me to hinge backward, not to squat down. So we could look at that from another angle. So this is looking directly down at the chair and my right leg here. And if I had a kettlebell, I could swing down between my legs, and the chair isn't going to interfere with anything as long as I'm hinging properly. And see, my shin is staying mostly vertical. But if I try to do a squatting swing, as soon as I squat down, you see what happened, I hit the chair. So, okay, so here's another view. So again, if you have a partner or a coach or whatever, they can run a stick down through here and plant it where that foot of the chair is, just near your instep, and the stick is leaning back. And what you want to do is you want to get down into your position of the kettlebell swing first. Hinge properly, shin about vertical, then set your chair up or the stick, and then maintain it in that position. And then when you do your swings, if you're hinging properly, your knee isn't going to really move a whole lot at all. Your shin, it's not going to be moving forward very much, maybe half an inch at the most. But if you try to do a squatting swing, as soon as you start to do that movement, you hit the chair, and it tells you, don't do that. Hinge back, go backward. So pull the chair back here, get it set, and practice some shadow swings with no weight until you've got that pattern ingrained. And then at that point, you could start adding some weight or load to your kettlebell swings. Maybe start with a lighter kettlebell than normal until you've got this locked in, so you're not trying to do squatting swings. So this is Walter. Hope that little demo of the various means of doing kettlebell swings helps some people out. And also the thoughts concerning whether you're going to perform GS style kettlebell swings or RKC hardstyle type swings. What's your goal? What's your purpose of doing that particular exercise or that particular program? So we'll get more into this stuff about program hopping and variety and things like that as we go down the road. But I'll see you next week, and have an awesome day.